Hello, my name is Jennifer. I'm in California now, but I was born and raised in Connecticut. And yeah, I learned in 2019 that I was conceived via sperm donor. Um, and the way that it happened technically was a DNA test, but not the kind of DNA test that most people are thinking of. In winter of 2018, like late 2018, my husband, sort of out of character for him, really, sent away for a DNA test that was being run by National Geographic. It was called the Genographic Project. Um, and basically, what it was doing was sort of crowdsourcing DNA tests in order to track via mitochondrial DNA the movement of human populations, like as we evolved and moved out of Africa.
Okay.
Um, and so this test was never, ever, ever meant to connect people to each other. All of the data was as de identified as a DNA test could possibly be. Like, there was no database where you could look at other people who were related to you or anything like that. It was just this was data that you were contributing to science in order to further the understanding of human evolution.
Okay.
And I was kind of surprised that my husband wanted to do it because he's kind of a privacy guy, right? And he never in a million years would have thought about sending a DNA sample to a privately owned company or anything like that. But I guess he had read through like the privacy stuff and was impressed with the way that National Geographic and whatever company they subcontracted with to like process the samples. Um, he was impressed by the privacy stuff that they had put in there and thought that it was, an important piece of science and he was glad to contribute.
Sure.
So he sent away for one DNA test. And when the package arrived, there were two tests completely by accident. Like whoever was filling the orders that day sent two. I think about that person all the time. Like
They
that
have no
random
idea what
person,
they did.
they have no idea. But like that person in a mailroom somewhere, some days I feel like they did the worst thing imaginable, and some days I feel like they did me a huge favor.
Yeah.
Anyways, we got two tests instead of one. And so my husband was like, well, now that we've got these two, why don't you do it? And I said, sure. And gave it basically no thought after that. And the reason I gave it no thought is because in my head, I knew where my family was from. Oh, sorry. One of the things that they did as like a thank you for um, participating, I guess, is that when they got your results and they had processed them, they sent you like a very broad sort of geographic breakdown of where people with your similar DNA were from.
Okay.
So, sort of like Ancestry's regions thing, they gave you
Yep.
that. Again, like they were never connecting you to other people, like you were never going to have any idea who else that was related to you had taken part in this, but they did just send you an email with like or a link to click on with like a graphic that said, congratulations, you're 52% Italian and 33% whatever.
Yep.
Um, and so when I sent the test off, I was like, oh, that's not going to tell me anything I don't know. Like, I know where my family's from.
Hmm.
My, what I was always told is that my mom's side of the family was all from like a very small village in the mountains, like east of Naples, basically. And that my dad's mom was Sicilian and that my dad's father was born in Warsaw in Poland. So I was very much expecting 75% vaguely Italian
Yeah.
region and 25% Polish.
Hmm.
And our my sort of ethnicity, I guess, like culturally, my family's very Italian. Um, They were part of the Great Migration that came over in the early 1900s from Naples. They settled in the New Haven area. This is on my mom's side. They we ate Italian food at home all the time. Um, I don't speak Italian. My mom doesn't really speak Italian. Her older brother understands it. My grandparents spoke it. Like it was the idea that we were Italian American was woven into the daily fabric of my life.
Yeah.
Similarly, the idea that my dad was Sicilian and Polish was also woven into the daily fabric of my life. My grandparents were this isn't very flattering to them. I now I know that, but like at the time they were like, "What do you mean, a Sicilian? Well, at least he's Catholic." You know, like the idea that that she was going to marry some guy who wasn't Neapolitan was
Yeah.
just insane.
Totally foreign.
Um, yeah, like, and Italians and Sicilians always have this sort of thing, right? Mainland Italians and Sicilians always have this sort of thing.
Hmm.
Uh, and and the fact that my dad was Polish was a piece of information that was used always very lovingly, um, to great effect whenever I or my dad had done something ill-advised or stupid or whatever. My mom would always be like, "Jennifer, don't be so Polish. Don't be Polish like your father." um, and so that was, I mean, you know, I was a second generation American via many, many different avenues, right? Like my grandparents on my mom's side, my grandparents on my dad's side. So the idea that that test was going to tell me anything I didn't already know, it genuinely never even occurred to me.
Yeah.
And we got our results, and my husband's mother is adopted. So there was a lot of information for him that was interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and we sort of, I spent like more time paying attention to that. Um, and then I looked at mine and I was like, this is nonsense. Like, this doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
It said I was half Italian. Um, but then it also had all of these other random, like, it just looked like nonsense. I was like 30 something percent Northwestern European. And I was like racking my brains, like, what countries count as Northwestern Europe? I was like, maybe Germany? Like, I don't know a soul from Germany. Like, I don't know I don't
Yeah.
know what this is. But I was, well, looking back on it now, it feels like I was being naive. But at the time, I just thought it was fascinating. I was like, ooh, this is a mystery.
Hmm.
And my dad's side of the family, not especially close. My grandfather died when I was 10. And like we weren't close before that, so I like don't have a ton of memories of him. Um, we didn't know a lot about like the family that had stayed behind in Poland, like his older brothers and sisters. Like we just didn't have a ton of information, and he was not, I'm told, the kind of guy who would share that kind of stuff.
Okay.
He was, um, I'm told, because I don't really remember much about him, like stoic and didn't say much to people and wasn't like an emotional sharer. So wouldn't have talked about those folks anyways.
Okay.
And so my first assumption when I saw that breakdown was that my dad wasn't actually as Polish as he thought he was. That
Hmm.
there had been something, that we didn't, that there was even more about that side of the family that we didn't know.
Yeah.
So I immediately called my parents, and I think we had mentioned um, something about having done this test or like taken part in this study or something. I'm pretty sure we mentioned it like offhandedly, maybe at Christmas before we got the results back. And so I called my parents immediately and I was like, you guys, this info is crazy. Like, daddy should probably do one of these because he, maybe doesn't like, maybe there's like something about his background that we don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to my mom on the phone and like, she she was good. I did not hear a single flicker of anxiety or anything in her voice. She was like, "Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Huh. I wonder. Yeah, well, we don't know a lot about that side of the family, so I guess anything's possible." But she didn't sound shocked or nervous or anything.
Right.
And and so I didn't really think much of it. I just kind of let it go.
Hmm.
Couple of weeks later, mid-January, I guess, um, we went to visit my parents. They live, or sorry, my dad's passed away, but my mom still lives like 45 minutes north of where I am now.
Okay.
And so we used to go, visit them all the time. Like, it's not a long drive, and we would just go, like, spend the afternoon at their apartment or, whatever. Um, and so we went up there. I thought it was just like a random conversation. We had dinner, and then we were all sitting down in the living room, and that was when my parents told me that my dad wasn't my biological father. And what I didn't know at the time, what I found out later as my husband and I were driving home that night, is that after I had called my parents to tell them about the genographic project results, they had gone into a full blown panic. They
Mm.
called my husband one day when I was at work and told him the whole story
Whoa.
before they told me anything. So my husband knew that I was donor conceived for several weeks before I
Wow.
did.
Wow. That's a
Yeah.
lot to carry.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll dig into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But just to give context to anyone listening, at what age were you finding all of this out for the first time?
Oh, such a good point. So I am going to be 52 at the end of this month. So I was 45 years old.
45. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yep.
All right. So I'm sure there's plenty more that that comes after all of this. But one thing I want to ask is, do you think that that if your parents hadn't told you the truth,
Mm.
that this could still be something that wouldn't have come up on your radar?
Oh, 100%. I would have absolutely no idea.
So you had fully put the information you got from the test just on the back burner and chalked
Yeah.
it up to, it is what it is. Pretty interesting, but
Yeah.
no need to
Yeah.
explore any deeper. Okay, got it.
Mm-mm. Did not, the idea at that moment, looking at those genographic project results, the idea that it meant that I wasn't biologically related to my father never once crossed my mind.
Okay, so this is a purely shocking moment. It sounds like for
Hmm.
you. And what do you remember in those earliest moments of hearing the full truth for the first time?
I remember being very confused at first because I thought my parents were telling me that they had to use IVF, and
Hmm.
I couldn't figure out why they looked so upset about it. Like, and I remember saying, like, you guys, this is none of my business. Like, I was hearing all sorts of information about my parents' fertility struggle that, like, I was like, you guys, I don't like, why is everyone so upset? Like, I don't understand. Like, this is your like medical information that you're telling me. Like, I don't need to know that.
Hmm.
And then I think it was obvious to them that I wasn't understanding what they were trying to say.
Right.
And that's when my mom told me that that they had trouble conceiving, that they went to Yale New Haven Hospital. And to this day, my mom says she doesn't remember like how she found out about the fact that Yale was, had like a sort of groundbreaking, cutting edge fertility program happening. That she went there. Um, and I think one of the other important pieces of this story is very specific to my dad. So my dad was in a pretty awful car accident when he was a senior in high school.
Hmm.
Um, he was a passenger in a car. They were driving in the winter. It skidded on some black ice. They hit a telephone pole. Um, and as a result, he sustained a spinal cord injury that left him paraplegic.
Okay.
And his spinal cord was not completely severed. He had a tiny bit of residual um, sensation and a tiny bit of residual function, muscular function, like motor function, um, but was, for all intents and purposes, a paraplegic.
Hmm.
And my dad being my dad, so he was the kind of guy that in high school I would have hated him. I would have been like, "Ugh, here comes Goody Two Shoes over there." Like, oh, I was more interested in like sneaking out to smoke cigarettes behind the,
Yeah.
behind the building and getting detention. Like, he was the captain of the football team and the president of the student body and the captain of the baseball team, and he had a cheerleader for a girlfriend, and it was like he was like the golden boy
Hmm.
of the pretty small town that he grew up in Connecticut. And so his accident and his resulting injury was like, I am not exaggerating when I say that every single person who lived in that town at that moment knew who my dad was and what had happened to him.
Yeah.
Um, and because my dad is my dad, he, after a very long stay in the hospital and a very long stay in rehab, um, I mean, and this was like 1962. So when I say long stay in the hospital, I mean he was in the hospital for a year and a half. And then he, like, in a full body cast because no one knew what to do with people with spinal cord injury.
Mm.
And then once he got out of the hospital, he went to college. He went to grad school. He started playing wheelchair basketball. He earned a Paralympic gold medal in wheelchair basketball, like less than 10 years after his initial injury. He's in the National Wheelchair Basketball Hall of Fame. When the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, he was handpicked by the governor of Connecticut to run the implementation statewide. Like, I'm talking like, oh, this guy. But like, I was so, so proud of the things that he accomplished.
Yeah.
He was never, ever, ever going to be the guy who just sat back and said, "Oh, woe is me. My life was
Hmm.
so hard." Um, and so, because of that, I grew up surrounded by people with disabilities. All of the guys on my dad's basketball team were like extra fathers. And, my dad's work, professional work, advocating for people with disabilities meant that, at the age of 6, I was conversing with people whose cerebral palsy was so severe that they were nonverbal, but they would use um, like a visual board, like they would, look at words and spell out a sentence.
Hmm.
That was my dad's friend Claude. Like, Claude and I used to chat all the time, and I was not even the slightest bit uncomfortable interacting with people whose bodies were differently abled.
Yeah.
And so the idea that some people with disabilities, like spinal cord injuries, could not have biological children, but that some could, was something I've known my entire life.
Mm. Okay.
And so I think that's why when when those results came back and my parents were sitting me down, that's why it was so hard for me to get to the moment where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
oh, you couldn't have biological children.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, like the idea that some people could and some people couldn't, like, I've known that since I know how babies happened,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it wasn't, this was not an idea that was foreign to me. Um, and, also people say crazy things to total strangers sometimes. And many of those people said crazy things to me from the time I was a child, asking if it was possible that my dad in the wheelchair or sitting next to me was my biological father. They
Yeah.
would, and sometimes it wasn't overt. Sometimes people would see us, or I would introduce him as my dad, and you would like see like the eyebrow wrinkle, like, is that really true?
Right.
Or, oh, right, he's your dad, but is he your dad? You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
people would, it was obvious that the idea that he was my father was, very few people just sort of accepted it and moved on. Like, there was always that, like, sort of flicker of hesitation.
Yeah.
And some people asked me directly if he was capable of achieving an erection. Those were fun conversations. I was like, I'm 12. Why
Yeah.
are you asking me about my father's penis? Like, what is wrong with you? What is even wrong in your brain right now?
Wow.
Like,
People are
who
crazy.
says that? But like, people would ask me those questions. People would ask my mom, like, just wildly personal and inappropriate questions.
Right.
And so the idea, I think one of the things I remember the most about that conversation that night when my parents were telling me the truth finally was, oh my God, all of those total jackasses were right. Like,
Yeah.
they were right. I have never felt like such a fool. I felt so stupid for having believed what I believed. Because clearly, people who didn't have the good sense to not talk about erections with 12-year-olds had figured it out, right? Like, they knew what was going on.
Mm.
Oh, I felt so dumb. I felt so dumb. Um, and I mean, the 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 physiologic truth of what I was led to believe is absolutely still the case. Like, some men with paraplegia are capable of fathering biological children without assistance, without any sort of assisted reproductive technologies, and some are not. Like, that is actually true.
Uh-huh.
My parents just told me that the thing that my dad was capable of doing was actually not true.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, so that I remember that. I remember very clearly being like, "Oh my God, all of those people were right."
Yeah.
And just feeling so stupid for having, you know, stuck up for my dad's virility, I guess. Like, what a weird position to put your kid in, first of all. I mean, the whole thing was just weird.
Yeah.
But also I've never ever seen my mom so distraught. Like, and my dad looked very much like he was about to throw up, pretty much the whole conversation.
Yeah.
um, and so I also remember immediately feeling like I had to take care of them, right?
Hmm.
Like, that they were so um, destabilized by finally revealing this information to me, that it was my job now to make them feel better and to reassure them and to be like,
Right.
no, 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 it's fine, don't worry about it. And I
To
don't ever
parent.
think I said
I was going to say to parent your parents.
to parent my
And
parents.
yeah.
Absolutely. um and I don't, I'm confident that I never said it's fine, don't worry about it, because it's not fine. It's really not fine. But I definitely wasn't um tuned into my own feelings about any of it until we had left their apartment and I was walking back to my car. And my
Hmm.
husband, you know, was sort of looking at me like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Like, this was a lot." And and I remember like walking and just feeling the rage. Like there's really no other word for it. Just feeling that like sort of take over and saying out loud, like, my parents lied to me. Like lies of omission and like outright like words that were lies for my entire life.
Yeah.
And you know, that is absolutely the very worst part of it. Like
Mhm.
my parents and I were very close. I'm an only child, or I was an only child.
Yeah.
Um, I There were decades where I would have told you without hesitation that my mom was my best friend. Um, when something bad happened, she was the first person I wanted to talk to. When something good happened, she was the first person I wanted to tell. Um, I I was once seeing a therapist, and she said, "You have the least complicated relationship with your parents I've ever seen." And it turns out that
Yeah.
that's not true,
Not quite
but
true.
that I
Yeah.
didn't know. I did
Hmm.
not know how complicated that relationship could be. And so that was the other, I think, really just awful part of it was that I believed that my mom, in addition to being my mom, was also my friend, and that
Yeah.
we had the kind of friendship where we were honest with each other, where we told each other things, and the realization that that was one sided, that I was telling her everything, and there was some very important stuff she was not telling me. Um, Hands down, the single most emotionally painful thing that's ever happened to me. Like,
Yeah.
there's no contest. Like, orders of magnitude, the worst feeling I've ever had.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's that was terrible.
Yeah.
Really, really terrible. I mean, in a lot of ways, it remains terrible. Um, Clearly, my relationship with my mom will never be the way that it was. I can't imagine how it ever could be.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing that really changed everything about this experience for me and for my mom is that so that was January of 2019 when they first told me that. And in April of 2019, my dad passed away um,
Okay.
unexpectedly. Um, he was fine, and then he was sick, and then he was gone. And that I, I, I really struggle with. I don't want to turn this into a therapy session, but um, the there's this knot in my heart that's anger at him and grief for him, and I don't know how I will ever untangle those when he's not here for me to talk to.
Right.
You know, like the closure that I'm slowly and painfully, you know, the work that I'm doing with my mom now to try to figure out a relationship that works for both of us and to, you know, honor the love and the care with which they raised me, but also make space for the harm that was done. Like, it's hard work. I would
Yeah.
give absolutely anything to be able to do that hard work with my dad.
Yeah.
And that will never happen.
Right.
And that is also, yeah, I don't know. Like when I when I first heard about this and before my dad had passed, I started to think about people who found this out after both of their parents had passed away.
Yeah.
And part of me was, I mean, not jealous, like no one should be envious that someone's parents have died, but like I was like, oh, but they never actually have to like go to Christmas with these people and look at them and see the faces of the folks that they trusted most in the world and realize that they engaged in a 45-year-long deception at their expense. And but I also understand after my dad died, I was like, oh no, this is awful. This is terrible because now there's no closure.
Mm,
And so I get both. I get to deal with my mom and I get no closure with my dad.
right. And so when you left your parents after they disclosed the information to you,
Mm,
and obviously there's this very deep, fresh, open wound.
yeah.
Um, what came after that? You know, you mentioned that you were, you know, the emotion was rage in a lot of ways, and there's anger. Um, what was the next step along this process um,
Yeah.
towards dealing
Um,
with the new reality?
yeah. Um, I, I, I did a lot of talking with as many people as were willing to listen to me. I felt compelled to tell people the story.
Yeah,
And I think part of it is that I have always been a verbal processor. Like I talk my way through things rather than just sort of silently think my way through them. And so I realized that, looking back on that time now, I think every time that I told that story was me trying to make sense of what had happened.
yeah.
Like trying to grapple with, oh no, this is real. Like this is a real thing that happened.
Hmm.
Um, and so for a long time, I think it was just, I don't even know how to describe it.
Kind of
Like
like trying
I
to
knew,
create that new groove in the way that you're
yeah,
processing your reality by saying the thing over and over until
mhm,
it feels real.
yeah, yeah, and to just, I think part of it, especially at the beginning, was I would tell people this story, maybe hoping that someone had a way in which it wasn't real, which I know doesn't actually make any sense,
Mm,
but I would tell people the story, and it was almost like I was searching for someone to say, oh, but here's this way in which you are probably related to your dad. Here's this way in which you, I don't know, look like him or talk like him or whatever.
yeah.
Which again was like, you know, my intellectual brain understood that that was not a possibility. Like, I'm a
Hmm.
nurse, I understand how DNA works, like, I know how human physiology works.
Yeah.
I, but there was, it was like there was this very confused little girl in my head who was just stunned and just open mouth shock.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was that little girl who was going to person after person telling the story to be like, reassure me that this couldn't possibly be true. Tell me that I'm misunderstanding this.
Hmm.
But, there's no misunderstanding. Like it is what happened.
Right.
And so I guess that's the denial phase, maybe, was me, even though I understood it on some level and accepted it on some level, I was still like hoping against hope that there was a way in which my parents were mistaken.
Yeah.
Because like every other person who used donor sperm in the early 70s, like my mom's appointment was in late 1973 and I was born in 1974. The doctor told her the same thing that those doctors were telling everybody at that time. They never told my parents they were going to mix sperm, but they did say, we want you to, have sex before you come to the appointment. We want you to come to the appointment. We want you to tell absolutely no one, especially not your child. We want you to forget this ever happened, go home and have sex again. And then you there's always going to be some chance that maybe it's actually your husband's sperm that conceived your child, and just stop. Don't even think about it. Don't think about it anymore.
Great advice, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because you know what's always helped a relationship? Lying. That's
Yeah.
always the best thing to do in a relationship. My
So
God.
this is how your parents were advised to go
Hmm.
about this whole process.
Yeah.
And I guess going back to like, that window of time you had between finding all of this out and your dad's passing,
Hmm.
was there ever any expression from your parents that they were willing to further unpack all of this? Or was it as soon as you left that initial conversation, they just kind of sat sat back with
Mm.
it and didn't say much more?
I don't think I gave them much of a choice. Because once I got angry, I was really, really, really angry, and they were going to hear all about it.
Okay.
Um, and so I'm sure that they would have been delighted to not bring it up ever again. But that was not that was not okay with me.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of conversations, and the vast majority of those conversations ended with them being so upset that I found myself in a position of consoling them rather
Mm,
than them supporting and consoling me.
yeah.
And that's extremely frustrating. Uh, you know, I, I think I've heard a lot of donor conceived people say that they really struggle with their sort of lack of agency in all of this, that everybody else involved had a choice or several choices that
Hmm.
they could make along the way, but the donor conceived person had no choice whatsoever.
Right.
And I have always found unfairness to be deeply, deeply enraging. And the the lack of equity there, like how unfair it was that I'm the one sort of bearing the brunt of these decisions, but that like nobody spared a thought for how I might feel about any of this
Yeah.
because they didn't think they had to, you know, like but and that also seemed ludicrous. Like really? Like you didn't think about how I might feel because you didn't think I'd ever know. Like we thought we would get away with it is not a great rationalization for decisions. Like
Yeah.
that's not like if I had ever said that to my parents after getting caught doing something, like that would not have flown. Like that would not have been okay. But I didn't think you'd ever find out that I skipped school or whatever.
Yeah.
Like they would have lost their minds. They would have been like, "What does that have to do with anything?"
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah,
So as it stands now, fast forwarding to the present, with your dad not in the picture anymore, has there been any progress, when thinking about healing from this that you've been able to have with your mother? Or yeah, how has that all played out in the recent years?
yeah. So with my mom, it's very slowly, very tentatively getting there. Like with the help of a family therapist who is trying to sort of facilitate conversations. Um, my Yeah, it's interesting. Like I know I've gotten more expressions of regret and apologies from my mom than a lot of donor conceived people do, and so I don't want to sound ungrateful for the fact that she's willing to at least admit that they made terrible, terrible mistakes. Um, but she also really doesn't quite get what the big deal is, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, everybody makes mistakes. You know, we made other mistakes when we were raising you, and, you know, we said we were sorry for those, and, you know, you had no trouble forgiving those, et cetera, et cetera. And I think she really, really, really struggles, as a lot of people do, I think, to understand that this isn't just an event that happened to me. The event is me,
Hmm.
right? Like it's a thing that happened to me and I am the thing that happened.
Right.
Like it's I have such a hard time explaining it, but it's it's a different kind of trauma than other sort of experiential things where like this cataclysmic event happens and then you have to come to terms with it and figure out how to handle it as you go forward. But when you're the thing that you have to figure out how to handle,
Yeah.
and there's an event and there's other people, like it just feels complicated. So again, like I give my mom a lot of credit for never trying to say that they didn't do anything wrong. And I know I'm 100% sure of this that they never had bad intentions. If they had bad intentions, I just wouldn't speak to my mother anymore. Like that would be pretty straightforward. But
Yeah. Yeah.
my they never ever meant to cause me any harm, and I know that.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm willing to continue to sort of muddle through this new relationship building.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but it's hard, you know, like my mom will say things that are very hurtful sometimes. And I'm sure I've said things to her that have been very hurtful to her. And, you know, we're working on it. And at this point, it's still hard for me to imagine what it will look like on the other side. Like after having been so close, it's hard for me to imagine what a more distant but still loving relationship feels like. Like I'm not sure what that will be like.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that she's sort of at least listening to me talk about what you know what it can't be. I think right now we're sort of focused more on the what it can't be, like the
Hmm.
boundary setting ideas, you know. But
Yeah.
um yeah, but the I think the thing that really more than anything has helped, and I've heard other donor conceived people say this too, is that in April of last year, I did send away an ancestry test, and found out that I have a sister, um, which is incredible,
Yeah.
and that I always call her my silver lining. She's my silver lining
Hmm.
because until I met her and until I became close with her, like there was nothing about this experience that was positive. It was just nothing but distress and it was terrible, like
Yeah.
just oppressive. And and then there was this little glimmer of my little sister who is um, a little bit younger than me, and it has been such a joy to get to know her and to see the ways that we're similar because there are lots, and to see the ways that we're not, and just to like she's so rad, like she's such a rad human being, and
Yeah.
I even if we weren't related I would want to be her friend,
Hmm.
and I don't think it's possible to have too many friends, so
Yeah.
it has been just yeah, like she's my silver lining, and
Yeah.
and you know in the year, I guess it's been a little more than a year that we've known each other, like I've still lives on the East Coast. I went to the East Coast to visit her for a week. She came here for a week at the end of July. And like when I went to visit her at the beginning of the year, um, I was on the plane getting ready to fly home. I had just boarded the plane and I was texting her, like, when can we hang out again? Sending her like my weekends off for the next year to be like, when can you come to California and hang out? Because the idea of not being able to spend more time with her was, yeah, like unacceptable, like
Hmm.
never gonna happen. Like
Yeah.
she's fully stuck with me.
And now, having grown up as an only child,
Mhm.
I've spoken to other donor conceived people who are in this position where it's not uncommon for them to have always wanted a sibling their whole
Sure.
life. And then this happens and they find out, wait, I actually do have other
Yeah.
siblings. Um, was that the position that you found yourself in? Was this something that you thought about as you were growing up? Like, oh, I wish I had a brother or a sister, or not so much?
Mm, I didn't. I grew up in one of those like stereotypical idyllic, like late 70s, early 80s suburbs where, there were kids my age in every house up and down the street. And, in the summer when we weren't in school, our parents would kick us out of the house and be like, come back for dinner. And then we would just like run feral through the neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
Um, that, I think those kids were like siblings that I didn't have to share my house with. Um, and so I didn't ever feel like I, was lacking in kids my age to spend time with. I never felt lonely. I never felt like my family was incomplete or anything like that. Like I was always very, very content.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and so it's been interesting. Like it wasn't until my dad died and in the first week following his death when there's all these tasks that you have to do, like the funeral arrangements and the turning off all the bills that are in his name, etc., like doing all of that sort of bureaucratic stuff, I guess. That was the first time in my life that I really wished that I had a sibling,
Mm,
because when I needed to tap out for a minute, I couldn't.
right.
My mom was, I mean, they'd been married for 48 years, like my mom was absolutely incapacitated by her grief. And I was also quite sad, obviously,
Yeah.
um, but also still so angry and still so resentful. What I really would have loved at that moment, and for the first time ever, I was like, oh my God, I wish I had a sibling, someone
Mm,
I could just be like, I got to tap out for a couple of hours. Can you take over whatever argument I'm having with the phone company right now so that, like,
yeah.
but that was the only time. That was the only time in my life that I really remember actively wishing that I had a sibling.
Got it.
Because I know lots of people who are not close to their siblings or who had, outright problematic relationships with their siblings.
Hmm.
Um, and I know lots of people who are really close to their siblings too, but I think I saw enough people who didn't have great relationships that I was like, nah, I don't know how much I'm missing here.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And then, so you discover this new sister, and
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about like some of the things you were finding in common with one another, or just things that struck you as like, whoa, nature
Yeah.
versus nurture. Nature's, really
Right.
coming in hot here.
Yeah. 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 So we don't really look anything alike. If I introduced you to her as my sister, you'd be like, yeah, okay. But if you saw us walking down the street together, you wouldn't say, "Oh my God, you must be sisters." Um, but we were both English majors in college. We were both avid readers. we at the very beginning really like very carefully sort of felt each other's political beliefs out a little bit to try to make sure that we weren't on opposite sides of the spectrum.
Hmm.
Um, and we're not, which is good, because I think that would have been maybe an insurmountable hurdle, without any
Sure.
background connection. That might have
Yeah.
been a little bit much.
Hmm.
Um, we both love scuba diving. Um, we so my when she came to visit me in California at the end of last month, I introduced her to my best friend here, and later, a couple of days ago, my friend said, it was like meeting you in a different body. It like you guys are such similar people, just in temperament and in. She said even in speech patterns, which is crazy because you didn't grow up, you know, talking to each other, absorbing any of those same influences.
Yeah.
Um, and there's like weird little things. Like I'm trying to think of silly. Um, oh, so here's one. So I hate the sensation of things that are tight around my neck. Like you will never find me in a turtleneck. I'm never wearing like a choker necklace or anything like that. She's exactly the same way.
Uh-huh.
Um, like we also neither of us can sleep unless we're laying down all the way, which makes like red eye flights a real problem because I
Yeah.
just end up sitting there staring at the seat back in front of me. Like, but I can't, yeah, like just like little things like that. And so like the first 6 months of us knowing each other would be just like randomly texting each other, how's your teeth? Like, do you have good teeth or bad teeth? Just like random questions about, I don't know, like, do you like spicy food or just absolutely random stuff. And because of the time difference, sometimes I would wake up and she would have already texted me something and I would just crack up laughing because it was just like not like hi, how are you? It would just be this random like your thoughts on pineapple on pizza, go. Like, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun to learn all about these things about this person. Like one of the things that really, really struck me. So when I got my ancestry results back, she was the top of my matches. She is the most closely related person to me. And like my uncle, I guess, had taken a test. I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so he's there, but because of random genetic stuff, like she and I share 25% and he and I share 24%. So
Hmm.
it was so weird. Like I recognized the names of all of the other people, but she was the one that was at the very top.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh yeah, this matters. Like
Right.
this it's not everything. DNA is not everything, but it's something. Like it's not nothing."
Yeah. So
So,
you see her name on there, and I guess just trying to figure out what the landscape of your situation actually is. Do we know if there are potentially other siblings out there, or no?
we do not know.
You don't know. Okay.
So she when she first took her test, so her parents disclosed their use of a sperm donor to her. Boy, I want to say it was like somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago. So she was significantly younger than me when she found out.
Okay.
Um, and she describes being absolutely compelled to find out the identity of the sperm donor, which is very of different experience from mine. It took me 5 years to send that test in. I could not imagine anything more coming from it than more destabilization, more disappointment, more I don't even know what. It just seemed like too big a thing to add to an already overwhelming sort of landscape.
Right.
Whereas she dove in immediately. Um, And when she got her test results back, the closest paternal match for her was like a second cousin once removed or something. And she, through like sheer pigheadedness, I think, managed to track the donor down using like public records and reaching out to this second cousin and trying to like piece together all of this stuff. She managed to track him down.
Hmm.
Um, and then it was another, God, 10 years maybe before I popped up as a half sibling. And that's it. That's just us as far as we know. Given what our biological father has said about the frequency of his donations, it doesn't seem possible that it's just the two of us. I mean, I know even back then when it was fresh sperm, I think the average success rate was like 10 or 15%. You know, that's like the average rate of pregnancy after unprotected sex, basically, is like 10 or 15%.
Yeah.
Um, Overall, sort of in general. Um, and and that's like people who are trying, people who are not trying, et cetera. Like that's just sort of like a global 10 to 15% total. Um, but since she was born in 1977 and I was born in 1974, like that's some years in
Sure.
between
Yep.
during which he was an active donor. So mathematically, it doesn't seem possible that it's just the two of us. Um, Unfortunately, I suspect that those folks, they don't know. They don't
Yeah.
know that they are donor conceived and have not taken a test for whatever reason. I mean, I would not have taken an ancestry test if I, like, it wouldn't have even occurred to me if this hadn't, if I hadn't learned about this. So I think people who have, like, I just don't think, and not everyone's just that interested in genealogy. And I think a lot of people have privacy concerns about sending DNA samples to, you know, private companies.
Sure.
Um,
And so,
so yeah,
to what degree would you say this idea that there could be more siblings out there, how much does that occupy your mind? Does it occupy your mind?
I do, I think about those folks a lot. Um, it's less about not being able to interact with them and more about just I just feel sad for them. Either they, yeah, I don't know, either they know the truth and have decided not to pursue it any further, in which case I don't feel sad for them about that. Like if they know the truth and they've made a decision that's right for them, then by all means.
Yeah.
um, but if they don't know, if their parents succeeded in doing what my parents hoped to do, which was take it to their graves, if they have no reason to question it, then they could potentially never know.
Yeah.
And that has real, like, medical implications for them. And I mean, I would just argue that it's just not okay for other people to decide that half of a person's genetic relatives are irrelevant.
Hmm.
Like that doesn't seem like an okay thing to decide on behalf of another person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, totally agree. Um, and then talk to me a little bit about what you've been able to learn about the donor. If that's something you're open to, it sounds like your new sister did the heavy lifting with the detective
Yeah,
work. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, when
yeah.
you first were presented with information around who he is,
Mm.
what did that feel like?
It was honestly like, forgive me if you're listening to this. My first thought was, oh, thank God, that means I don't have to talk to this guy at all.
Mm.
Because it, what I thought at the time, what I wanted was medical history information. I wanted, it wasn't that I didn't want to know the specific human being that he is. That's not it at all. It's, it's that it felt weirdly disrespectful to my dad to engage
Mm.
with him, um, with my biological father. Like it felt like I had a dad.
Yeah.
What do I need? What do I need this guy for if I had a dad? Like I didn't have siblings. I didn't have a sister. I'm elated to have a sister now.
Hmm.
Um, that piece felt like very easy to integrate. I use the example of a parking lot, right? My like the parking space for father was full. The parking space for mother had a car parked in it, but my sibling parking spaces were there was just never a car there. And
Hmm.
so she could pull the car in and it's like, "Oh great, now I have a sibling." But this guy, I was like, where does he park?"
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure I already like I'm not sure I have the answer or at least not one that fits into the extended metaphor of parking lots. Um, but I I'm very glad that I didn't follow that instinct and say, you know what, never mind, I don't actually need to reach out to him now that because my sister, passed along all of the sort of background medical information that she had about him. And that was what prompted me to say, like, oh, good, well, now I don't actually need to talk to him. Um, and again, like, I am so glad that I didn't listen to that first instinct. Um, because now I have met him and I am in regular contact with him. And he's a genuinely lovely human being. And I am so glad to have him in my life as a person I know, as a person I care about. Um, the idea that any part of my connection with him could change anything about my relationship with my dad is so foolish. Like the idea is just so silly. Like
Yeah.
of course it doesn't. Of course they have nothing to do with each other. Nothing could possibly make my dad any less my dad. Like so the idea that yeah, like that was a foolish notion in my head that any part of a relationship, a friendship with my biological father could somehow reflect badly on my relationship with my dad. No, that thought evaporated almost immediately.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and it turns out that my parents were not lied to when they were told that it would be a medical student or a resident or some other um, person associated with Yale because he was a medical student at Yale and went on to be a doctor. So I know a lot of people's parents were told that it would be a medical student, and then it turned out to not be at all.
Hmm.
But in this case, it was actually true. Um, and yeah, we look startlingly alike, um, and that was weird. That was really weird. Um, and when I met him, he had a ton of old photos of like family going back through the generations, and there's this one picture of what would be his great grandmother that could have been a picture of me when I was a kid. Like in this photo, his great grandmother was 18 years old, and that absolutely could have been a photo of me dressed a little oddly for the times when I was 18, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, and that I was not expecting those photos to be as meaningful to me as they were. Um, but I took pictures of the pictures, you know, like modern day being what it is. I took photos of the photos, and now I have them. And like when I got back from meeting him, I like was like showing everybody. I was like, look, this person, look at this person. They look so much like me.
Yeah.
Um, and I realized that like that experience, that's what most people get as like organically as they're growing up with their biological relatives. And it is a profoundly weird experience to have that happen when you're 50.
Yeah.
Like it is so weird. Um but I'm very very glad that I had it. I'm glad that I can, you know, put those pieces together. Especially since I think when I first found out, looking in the mirror was very very hard for me. Like and I've heard lots of other people say this similar thing. Like I it was weeks before I could really take a good look in the mirror because God only knows what my eye makeup looked like at that point in time, those weeks, because I was just because I yeah, you know the did you watch Severance, the television show?
I began watching it. I have to jump back into it. And I didn't stop because I didn't like it. It just
Okay.
I pushed to the side
I'm
for a
not
little bit. Yeah.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but the scene, and they show this over and over again, where like they show up to work and they get in the elevator and they take the elevator to their work floor, and halfway down the elevator there's a visual effect where everything just sort of shifts
Mm,
slightly in their face. They're obviously still the same person,
yeah.
but you're meant to know that something in them has changed,
Yeah.
and that like weird, it's almost a little bit nauseating to watch. Like it makes you a little bit motion sick to because like they're moving and then they're shifting, and it's just like a weird visual effect. Like that is what it felt like for me to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like it was me, but it wasn't, and it looked like me but it didn't anymore.
Mm. Just like an
And
energetic flip almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and it was, yeah, it's I I felt like a stranger to myself. I looked like a stranger to myself. It was, yeah, I really, really struggled with looking in the mirror. And
Mhm.
I think part of what I found so rewarding about seeing all of those old family photos is that I was getting a reflection, right? Like I was looking at, not at myself, but at the lineage of people who reflected back at me and who I was seeing pieces of when I looked in the mirror.
Yeah.
Um, and that was, I don't, I struggle with the word healing. Not really sure that that is, hmm, like, because to me, there's two separate issues. Like, there's the lies, and then there's having been donor conceived. The
Hmm.
latter I find much easier to adjust to and much easier to integrate into my existence
Yeah.
than the lies.
Right.
So in I don't really think that I need to heal anything from having discovered I was donor conceived. I I don't think it really makes that much of a I can't say it doesn't make that much of a difference. It makes a difference, but not a problematic one, I guess, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I I still struggle with the idea that being mad about being lied to is something that I need to get over. Like, no, I think it's okay that I'm mad that I was lied to.
Yeah.
I don't
Definitely.
don't think I need to try to feel a different way about that. I think the way I feel about it is perfectly justified.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so it wasn't a healing moment to to see those people and to feel like I was reflected and being reflected at, but it felt good. Like it
Yeah.
felt grounding, I guess. It felt like I sort of understood better like where my place in the crowd of humanity really was.
Yeah. And it makes your story make more sense. And I
Yeah.
think we find comfort in that. Um, okay. A lot of good stuff there. There is one thing that I want to go back to that you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier on that I've been waiting to ask about. And it's unrelated to any of this other stuff that we've been talking about recently. Your husband, he
Oh
knew
yeah.
about this for several weeks before you did. What did he have to say about that once you finally found the truth out? How difficult was it for him to be carrying that and not able to say anything?
Yeah. It was really, really, really hard for him.
Yeah.
Um, my husband is like maybe the most conflict averse person I've ever met. And he but also the person who feels compelled to help when something is wrong or when someone is upset or when something is broken or you name it. Like he's really, really, really sensitive and he wants to help.
Hmm.
And when we were talking about it, I think he brought it, he was, I mean, he told me, he was like, I need you to know, like, this is the way that it went down. Like your mom called and she was hysterical. Like I was really genuinely worried about if she was going to be okay. And you know, I she told me this whole story and all I heard was like this elderly woman who was distraught and he's like my first instinct was just to say whatever she needed me to say so that she could be less distraught.
Hmm.
um but it was a terrible position to put him in. He was sort of stuck, right? Like he could either kind of do their dirty work for them and tell me himself, or had to risk my anger at him having kept a secret from me.
Yeah.
Um, and like when he brought it up to tell me what had happened, like I really think he was expecting me to be furious with him. Um, and I wasn't. Like I'd be furious with him if he did it again, right? Like after we talked and I said like next time I really need you to push back on my parents or whoever and be like, I'm absolutely not keeping this secret from her.
Yeah.
This is not okay to put me in this position. It's not okay to lie to her. It's not okay to put this between us. We talked that all out and now going forward he knows how I would rather have that kind of thing handled.
Yeah.
But at the time, I just my heart breaks for him and for the position that he was put into. And I think he did the best he could under the circumstances.
Yeah.
Um, but that talk about being mad about things like ooh, don't come for my husband, don't do it. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
big mad if you hurt him.
Yeah.
And he I think he really struggled with
Mm.
the morality of it, with the conflict inherent in it. Like I think it was really a tough time for him.
Yeah. I
And
mean, when you first brought it up, I was like, that's an impossible situation. I have no idea what I would do.
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah, it's terrible. But
All right.
it we worked it out now and he knows how I'd like him to handle it. And you know, I certainly do not think he did the wrong thing. Like I'm mostly I just feel sad for him having to deal with it at all.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Are there any final thoughts? Is there any part of the story that we haven't touched on yet that you want to add in at the end? Um, any just general message that you want to put out to the people listening?
Um, I think a number of your podcast guests have said this, but if there are any recipient parents who are listening and they are wondering whether or not they need or should or ought to tell their children the truth about their genetic origins, yes, they do.
Yeah.
Those those people are human beings and they deserve to know this information about themselves. Um,
Hmm.
and it, I know it sounds crazy, especially if you haven't been through it yourself, but knowing your genetic biological relatives does not take away from the relationships you have with your family, with the
Hmm.
people who raised you, with the people who love you, whether they are biologically related to you or not.
Yeah.
It there is no, like, love isn't pie, right? Like, if you give a piece away, it doesn't mean you have less pie for other people. Like, there's never such a thing as too many people being in your circle of love and community.
Yeah.
There's space for all of those folks.
Hmm.
I'm I'm so glad that I have my sister and my biological father as part of my family now. It's it's the best. I wouldn't do anything different. I wouldn't want anything to be different because
Yeah.
now I know where I'm ending up.
Yeah. It's one of those cases where it's not less is more, it's actually more is more.
More is more.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's all I got.
Great.
Thank you so much. That was a really beautiful story.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate you sharing and opening up the way you did. I'm gonna hit stop here because it does take a minute for the video to upload.